So, the subject of today's video is going to be pure religion, or religion that is acceptable to God. Now, terms like religion often get a bad name, as does faith, I suppose, because some people equivocate faith with blind faith. Faith, which just means trust, people make that synonymous with trust without evidence. Which, it's possible to trust without evidence. I mean, people trust all sorts of things without evidence. But that's not really the faith of the Bible. I mean, God invites us to test the things that He says. And there's a similar case with religion. And there's lots of charlatans under the banner of this religion or that religion. And they do give religion in general a bad name, or at least they can do that in the minds of men. So let's try to sort that out and see if we can't find what is acceptable religion before God. So I'm going to start by quoting a few verses from the book of James. Now, the book of James is a relatively short book in the Bible. It's only 5 chapters, and it takes up maybe a few pages in your standard Bible. We're going to start in chapter 1 with verse 26. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep one unspotted from the world. So there's 3 things to take away from here. One is, if you don't learn to control your tongue, your religion is useless. Pure and undefiled religion is also about being compassionate to the less fortunate, widows and orphans. And lastly, holy living, keeping oneself unspotted from the world. God is holy. He expects us to strive to be holy as well. So we're going to speak to each of these points a little bit, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of what acceptable religion before God is. So let's start with the tongue. Christ taught that it's not what goes into a man's mouth that defiles him, but it's what comes out of a man's mouth that defiles him. Because what proceeds out of a man's mouth comes from a man's heart, and you can learn a lot about a man just by listening to him. And in fact, that's generally how I shore people up. I'll listen to them for a period of time. I'll test the things that they're saying. Figure out all kinds of things about him. For example, if I observe him saying things that are untrue, well, then I know one of 2 things is the case. Either he's deceived himself, and he's ignorantly passing along falsehood, or he's intentionally lying. He's doing what he's doing out of maliciousness, I suppose. I can't always be sure if it's just incompetence or if it's maliciousness, but in either case, I know that's a guy that I can't trust what he has to say, because he isn't talking right. And oftentimes, just generally speaking, when people speak, they're revealing their mind to you. If you listen carefully and you're discerning, you can figure out what makes them tick. But anyway, I'm off on a little bit of a tangent. How does this relate to the subject at hand? Well, we're going to go to James chapter 3. And he expounds upon this quite a bit, so let's get into it. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive the stricter judgment. So what's the principle here? If you want to be a teacher and instruct people in the Lord, make sure you know what you're talking about, because, if you get it wrong, you're going to receive a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is perfect, able to bridle his whole body. So that's an interesting principle. I mean, he's saying, if you learn to control your tongue, you'll have better control over your whole body. So if you're struggling with self-control, start focusing on what's right underneath your nose, your mouth. Make sure to get that under control, and the rest of your body will follow, according to this verse. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouth, that they may obey us. We may turn the whole body. Look also at ships. Although they are so large and driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder wherever the pilot desires. Even so, the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. So we're going to take a field trip over to the book of Proverbs, where I think this is highlighted as well. So Proverbs chapter 6, starting with verse 16, it's going to list 7 things the Lord hates. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that deceives wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and he who sows discord among brethren. So at least 3 of these are abominations that you commit with your tongue. A lying tongue, for one. A false witness, which is, accusing others falsely. Or I suppose the reverse of that, which would be lying to cover up some transgression or some crime. So that you do with your mouth. And he that sows discord among brethren, that would be gossip or, speech designed to set brethren at odds with one another. I suppose what goes on with politics would be a prime example of that. Would-be politicians are always trying to play one group against another. It's sort of the whole point of, identitarian politics. Us versus them. But I digress. Keep that in mind. Out of the 7 things God says are an abomination to him, at least 3 of them are things you do with your mouth. All right, going back to James. See how great a forest a little fire kindles, and the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no man can tame the tongue. Yeah, so we can tame all kinds of animals, but we cannot tame our tongues. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless God and Father, and with it we curse men, who are made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring send forth fresh water, and bitter from the same opening? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Thus, no spring yields both salt water and fresh. So if you don't want your religion to be useless, as he says in chapter 1, verse 26, if you don't want your religion to be useless, learn to control your tongue. So let's look at verse 27. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble. So this idea of being mindful and taking care of the less fortunate is a theme throughout Scripture, Old and New Testament, and it's evident in the example of Christ as well. What did he go around doing? He went around, along with preaching the gospel, he would also heal sick people. He would multiply loaves and fishes to feed masses of people. He made a point of ministering unto the poor among them. And he instructed his followers to do likewise, to be generous to the poor. So to highlight this, I'm going to go back to the Old Testament, one of the Old Testament prophets, Isaiah. So Isaiah 58. Shout with the voice of a trumpet blast. Shout aloud, don't be timid. Tell my people Israel of their sins. Yet they act so pious. They come to the temple every day and delight to learn all about me. They act like a righteous nation that would never abandon the laws of its God. They ask me to take action on their behalf, pretending they want to be near me. We have fasted before you, they say. Why aren't you impressed? Been We have been very hard on ourselves, and you don't even notice. I will tell you why. It is because you are fasting to please yourselves. Even while you fast, you keep oppressing your workers. What good is fasting when you keep on fighting and quarreling? This kind of fasting will never get you anywhere with me. You humble yourselves by going through the motions of penance, bowing your heads, like reeds bending in the wind. You dress in burlap and cover yourselves in ashes. So they dress up in uncomfortable ways and bow their heads, go through this show of penance. But they do it while they're working iniquity. And God's calling them out for being play actors, essentially. Is this what you call fasting? Do you really think this will please the Lord? No, this is the kind of fasting I want. Free those who are wrongly imprisoned. Lighten the burden of those who work for you. Let the oppressed go free, and remove the chains that bind people. Share your bread with the hungry, and give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them, and do not hide from your relatives who need your help. Then your salvation will come like the dawn, and your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind. So God will be your guarding your flanks, guarding your blind spots. Then when you call, the Lord will answer, "Yes, I am here." He will quickly reply. Remove the yoke of oppression. Stop pointing your finger and spreading vicious rumors. Feed the hungry and help those in trouble. Then your light shall shine from the darkness, and the darkness around you will be as bright as noon. The Lord will guide you continually, giving you water when you are dry and restoring your strength. You shall be like a well-watered garden, like an ever-flowing spring. Some of you will rebuild the desert ruins of your cities. Then you will be known as the rebuilder of walls and restorer of homes. Keep the Sabbath day holy. Don't pursue your own interest on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath, and speak of it as a delight, as the Lord's holy day. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day. And don't follow your own desires or talk idle. Then the Lord will be your delight. I will give you great honor and satisfy you with the inheritance I promised to your ancestor Jacob. I, the Lord, have spoken. So really this chapter both points to, being compassionate to the less fortunate. It talks about, lightening the burden of your workers, letting the oppressed go free, feeding the hungry, giving shelter to the homeless. And it also talks about holy living, honor the Sabbaths. I have to apologize. They're doing construction on my street today, so if you hear a jackhammer in the background, that's what that is. But anyway, like the Sabbath, there's a couple of ways you can miss the mark on the Sabbath. One is to just disregard it and follow your own interest and do whatever you want that day. And the other is to make it a burdensome day. It's supposed to be a delight, a day of rest. And that's not good either. It should be a day that you're taking a break and focusing on the Lord. Now, in Judaism, the Sabbath is from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, and they have different instructions to follow that day. I'm not sure if Gentile Christians are required to follow the Sabbath days the same way Old Testament Jews were. But in any event, it's a good practice to have your day of rest and to honor the Lord. And if you're a Christian, it's sort of like the bookends of the week. You have the Sabbath would be Saturday. You're supposed to take a break and delight in the Lord. And then, of course, Sunday's the Lord's day, where Christians historically or traditionally have gone to church that day. And in my book, Sunday's the first day of the week. So the last day of the week, you're supposed to take a break and honor God, and the first day of the week you're supposed to start it by honoring God, which sort of sets the tone for the rest of the week. Anyway, that would be part of keeping yourself unspotted from the world, is trying to live a holy life, trying to honor God. So lastly, I'm going to go to Matthew 6. So which is one of the Gospels, and it's words attributed directly to Christ. And I do this because I like to fancy myself a student of Christ. I could rightly be called a Christian in that. But when you look to the words and the example of Christ, he described himself as fulfilling the scriptures. And he really is like a condensed version of so much of the wisdom in the Old Testament, in the prophets, as well as a lot of the principles that are reverberated in the epistles. So by following Christ, you inadvert, whether you intend to or not, you're following what's in the prophets, and you're keeping the guidance that's written into all the epistles, the letters that are after the gospel books. So Matthew 5 through 7 are the Sermon on the Mount. When I would instruct people and try to encourage them in the faith, those 3 chapters are where I would often point people. I would say, look, if you want eternal life, if you want to please God, read those 5 chapters and then try to understand what they mean, and then do what they say. So we're gonna read through much of chapter 6 here, because it really lays out that pure and undefiled religion, as James alludes to. So he's going to talk about, Isaiah talked about doing good works and looking out for the poor and all that. But there's a way you should be doing it and a way you shouldn't be doing it. I think I'm going to read from the New King James. I switch between the New King James version and the New Living Translation. I do like the New King James. Sometimes I use the New Living Translation because I feel like the language is easier for a larger audience to understand. But this one I think is clear in the New King James, so I'm going to use that version. Take heed that you do not do your charitable deeds before men, to be seen by them. Otherwise you have no reward from your Father in heaven. Therefore, when you do a charitable deed, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues, as the play actors, the people that are putting on a show for men, and in the streets, and that they may have glory of men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your charitable deed may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will himself reward you openly. So what's the principle here? I mean, obviously, if you're directly going out and doing charitable deeds, the people you're helping are gonna know, and I think that's okay. The scriptures also say that you should let your light so shine before men that they will glorify your Father in heaven. But what your charitable deeds ought not be is part of your PR campaign to promote yourself. It shouldn't be, look how good of a person I am. Look what I'm doing. So when you're doing something charitable, you shouldn't be sounding a trumpet to make sure everybody knows that you're being charitable. But you should do it on the sneak, secretly, so that God can see that you're doing it for him. God, who judges the heart and sees in secret, will himself reward you openly. And he has a similar teaching when it comes to prayer. And when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners, that they may be seen of men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you pray, go into your room, and when you have shut your door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Now again, same principle here. And does this mean that, your pastor who's leading the congregation in prayer is sinning? Not necessarily. I mean, Jesus would pray with his disciples. But the principle is here is make sure that you're praying to be seen of God, that you're not just putting on a show. Look how pious I am. Look, I'm out praying. And you're not just putting on a show for men. And he also says, when you pray, do not use vain repetitions, as the heathen do, for they think they will be heard for their many words. So what does that mean? It means don't just mindlessly chant words because you think that pleases God. I mean, perhaps that's demeaning for both you and also God. Is God just some spell you can enchant if you just say the magic words enough? Or is he the supreme judge of the universe that expects you to honor him with your lips? He expects you to have a relationship with him and to speak to him in earnest. And it goes on to give us a model prayer. Therefore, do not be like them, for your Father knows the things you need before you ask. In this manner, therefore, pray. So think about that. God already knows what you need. God, who discerns your heart and knows what you're thinking, knows what you're going to say before you say it. If you're going to speak to that God, you should do it in this manner. O Heavenly Father, hallowed be your name. So it starts by acknowledging who God is. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. So what it's saying here by not saying it is denying oneself, to God, your kingdom done, your kingdom come, your will be done. God's not Santa Claus who's going to give you whatever you ask for, but your prayer should be that your will would align with his. You have to submit to his will. Give us this day our daily bread. Be thankful for the things that you have. Be thankful that you're not starving and homeless. And then maybe be mindful of the people that are. As we learned from reading Isaiah 58. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. This is very important. You'll see that in a minute. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And it ends with, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. And he goes on to elaborate on this forgiveness of others. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. So again, all those sins that you committed against God, if you want forgiveness for those, well then model that behavior with the people that have sinned against you. If you've done terrible things and you want God to forgive you, but you're holding on to these petty grudges, or even serious grudges because other people have done terrible things to you, Christ seems to be saying it's in your best interest to learn to let those things go. It doesn't mean you have to trust the people that have done terrible things to you. It doesn't mean you have to forget what they did, but you need to let it go and not let it infect your life. Moving on. Moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear to men to be fasting. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head with oil, and wash your face, so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Again, your religion shouldn't be performative just to be seen of other people. It's a common theme if you haven't caught on to it yet. And lastly, there's more to this chapter, but I think I'm gonna read a couple more verses here, and then I think I've made my case. Do not lay up for yourself treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also. So, verse 24, he says it outright. No man can serve two masters. He will hate one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, and this word just means wealth. So it's not saying that money or wealth is inherently evil. It just means don't make those things your idol, because that will put you at enmity with God. That doesn't necessarily mean that God expects you to be destitute and take a vow of poverty. I mean, you can do that if you want to, but for sure, just make sure you're not making money your idol. Don't serve money instead of God. And you can tell who's doing that and who's making money their idol by how they behave with it, by examining the relationship with money. The really obvious tell would be, Are they breaking God's commandments in order to get more money? Are you willing to lie and steal to pad your bank account? If you're a businessman, are you stingy with your employees because, oh well, anything you give to them is less you have for yourself? Do you rip off your customers? If you're an employee, do you milk the clock? Do you lie about how much work you put in so you can get a little bit more? Are you constantly trying to sabotage your rivals, your fellow employees? You're bad mouthing them and trying to build up yourself, so you're the one who gets the promotion or the raise or whatever the case may be. It stands to reason if you're willing to break God's commandments in pursuit of wealth or gain. So we'll end where we sort of started with the last few verses of James chapter 1. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his own tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit the orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. So if you really want to see God move in your life, start by controlling your tongue. Don't tell the truth, don't gossip, don't slander, but guard your tongue and make sure that what's coming out of it doesn't defile you. And then, care for the widows and orphans. Look after the less fortunate, and do it in such a way that it's pleasing to God. Don't just do it to look good, to put on a show for people. Keep oneself unspotted from the world. Try to live a godly life, which is difficult often in an ungodly world, but that's what God expects from us. Break the trend. Often the world follows its own lust. Well, you can be an example of the alternative, which is to follow God's ways. Model that behavior. So hopefully I did a good job of explaining this. But if you want to get closer to God, then consider these things and implement them.